your definition, your operational definition of what culture is. If you need to explain, define culture to somebody, how would you define it? That's number one. Number two, how have you seen it play out in your various roles in different organizations? And how would you explain to somebody in terms of how culture impacts organizational performance? Intrinsically, we all understand, but if you want to establish a cause effect relationship in words, how would you do that?
Sure. To me, culture is something which is the soul of an organization. Culture is something is the purpose for which an organization exists. Culture is your story. Culture is the DNA of an organization. And if I were to put it, culture is like a bus, and people talk of a strategy. Strategy is like a bicycle. If a bicycle has to pull a bus, what will happen? In some time, there will be a collision. The bicycle will get crushed, and there will be some damage to the bus also. That's how the culture and strategy in an organization is. People talk of strategy, people talk of vision, but it is culture which is the underlying factor of defining whether an organization will become successful or not. There are many examples where successful enterprises have thrived because of the intrinsic culture of an organization and the very fact that the organizations have defined, either in writing or not. Organizations have defined their cultures, they have lived their cultures, they have lived the values, and that has made the organizations successful. To me, Prashant, I have always looked and I have always believed very passionately that the organizations, the organizations, uh, in organizations, there are two type of cultures which predominantly exist. One is the culture of performance, and another is the culture of belongingness. Both the cultures, in fact, both the factors of the culture cannot exist without each other. If you have only culture of performance and you don't have culture of belongingness, the organizations don't run in the long run because there is something called emotion. There are something called there is always a culture of belongingness where you talk of empathy, you talk of the people care, you talk of employee rewards, you talk of the emotions which go with an organization. So culture of belongingness is where I say that I belong to this place. I work for this place means I belong to this place. And it in isolation cannot exist if there is no culture of performance.
Yeah.
So culture of performance means what? Customer centricity, financial performance, the rigor, the work that goes into making an organization successful. So the organizations have to put a lot of emphasis on both the things, culture of performance and culture of belongingness. And then there is always an element of the within the culture of belongingness and culture of performance is about openness, is about transparency, is about honesty, is about truth. And one has to live these values. And if you don't live these values, you will be exposed. This will be a mask. So it's important that you define your values, you define your culture, and then run with it. As I gave the example of bus and a bicycle. The bicycle will get crushed if it were to pull a bus. Some damage will happen to bus, but it won't be that big a damage where it has to be rebuilt again. Some damage happens to culture. Since you've defined your culture, you can always rebuild on that. It's very difficult. If the strategy gets crushed and
Culture is
and culture is intact, you can at least have some solace that the you know uh, the, the, the culture will still play a very large role in redefining your strategies, in redefining your vision. That's how I look at culture.
very interesting analogy.
So culture is a soul food. Culture is a DNA. Culture is why I work here. Do I belong to this place or not? And yeah, that's how I will define culture.